everybody. Thank everybody for coming tonight. My name is Amy Canberg. I'm the president of the Magnolia Community Council. And just a little business to get out of the way, and then we'll jump into our agenda, which we have such a great agenda tonight. I am really thankful for all the speakers and everybody from the Community Council that helped pull this meeting together for us tonight. Sorry. But first of all, for the trustees here tonight, I sent the meeting minutes from the January meeting out. Was there any changes or anything to those? And do I have
the mic a little closer? It's hard to hear. Sorry.
Hello, can you hear me now? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the January meeting minutes? Okay, thank you. Also just wanted to mention that our meeting is going to be recorded tonight. And the first thing on, and then the other thing I was going to mention too is just as we have speakers, just so we can, the group on Zoom can hear, we're going to, when we get to the question and answer period as part of our presentation tonight, we're going to need people to come up to the microphone to ask the questions so that people on Zoom can hear the questions. And then please share your name first before your question. But so first up, we're going to get started with City Council updates with, we've got Joel from Dan Strauss's office, and so we'll have you go first.
Hey folks, I'm Joel Raphael. I'm from the Office of Councilmember Dan Strauss. We're City Council District 6. We cover Magnolia and Greenwood and Ballard and Finney and Greenlee and a bunch of other smaller micro neighborhoods. As far as updates for y'all, we got the comp plan in from the mayor's office, and so we're going to be taking a look at that. We're going to be bringing that up in the next couple of weeks, but we don't really have any updates for you on that one for the moment. Is Don's here? Perfect. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Environmental Learning Center, and we went ahead and we got all the money set up in the budget for the building. But looking at the construction for that, that's going to be a protracted process over a couple of years. But as part of that, we're going to be updating the amenities of the building by quite a bit. It looks like it's going to be state-of-the-art everything by the time it's done. But as far as the money that we have right now, it's part of the planning process that should be finished by the end.
Is the carbon sequestration city money, right?
From my understanding, yes. And then as far as the program, the teachers themselves, all of that money got put into the FEC levy, and those positions are actually open right now. You can go ahead and apply and sign up. So we're hiring those right now for this position.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Just today, the City Council passed a law from Berta Rivera's office, making it so that we're no longer sharing any sort of video equipment. We're shutting down the video equipment that we can be sharing with federal immigration agencies. And next week, we'll be working on a bill from Councilman Rink's office that will prevent any the building of any detention facilities from NCL city. Really all I've got from our district. I think I'll let Rebecca go unless we got a question.
Yeah, there's some construction going on the Valley Bridge weekdays. Do you know what that's for?
I think SDOT's just doing some basic maintenance on the bridge, from my understanding. Anyone else? Perfect.
Thank you. Then we have Rebecca from Councilmember Kettle's District 7 on Zoom. Will be joining us as well. Rebecca?
Hello, can everybody hear me okay? Yay, nay, I just unmuted myself. Okay, awesome. Getting some, I think y'all can hear me?
Good.
Okay, all right.
We can't hear on the room, but they can hear on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, great. Well,
sorry.
No worries. The joy of technical difficulties in this, post-pandemic.
Coming out of here.
Yeah.
1 second, Rebecca.
Yep, no worries.
Okay, Rebecca.
All right, can y'all hear me now? Okay, that sounds like a yes. At the sounding like a really bad telecommunications commercial. Thank you for your patience. All right. As Joel said, we did pass Councilmember Rivera's bill today to basically do a technical fix for the city's adoption of the Keep Washington Working Act, which just limits what information can be passed to federal immigration enforcement. And Councilmember Rink's bill is coming up next week. We have a few of the other pieces of legislation that are coming up over the next couple of weeks, and then Councilmember Kettle is in very regular meetings with the mayor's office, with City Attorney Erica Evans' office, and with SFD and SFD, Seattle Police, Seattle Fire. Just to basically, because we understand that a lot of the pieces of legislation that we're working on right now are great. They're very proactive and in the face of what we have seen in other municipalities. But no one is naive enough to think that that's going to be it. So things will happen. More legislation will come down the pipe. So that is ongoing. Just for as somebody who works with constituents, as I'm sure Joel can share these sentiments, I'm just glad that this legislation is now live for public consumption. Because I know that we were receiving many emails and calls through the month of January and into February, basically asking what the city was going to do, and we had limitations in what we could and could not say. So just as Joel said, comp plan is back. I don't know if that makes it like a Terminator film, but I could see a meme of the comp plan logo being superimposed over Arnold Schwarzenegger's face. So Councilmember Kettle is going to be doing a bunch of comp plan specific office hours. That information will be coming out in a newsletter either late this week or early next week. However, here is the important bit for you. So there are going to be 4 comp plan office hours sessions scheduled with Councilmember Kettle. Then there's going to be a 5th one that's going to be staff only. So the first one is going to take place downtown. The second one is going to take place at the Queen Anne Coffee Company in the patio. The third one is going to be on Thursday, March 26th. It's going to take place at the Magnolia Library meeting room. I decided to run the risk of technically going into D6 territory, but I've been in the Magnolia Library meeting room. So I booked it for the council member and staff to come to office hours. If you have not been to our office hours.
I'm mute.
Hello? Okay. Anyway, our office hours are first come, first serve. You do not reserve time in the days leading up to it. It just makes it fairer for everybody else. So Thursday, March 26th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Magnolia Library meeting room. There will be others that will be in other parts of the city. So if you can't make Thursday, 26th at the Magnolia Library meeting room, that is totally chill. But I just wanted to give y'all a heads up that we're going to be in your neck of the woods. So if you have questions about what's going on with comprehensive plan, or if you have some policy recommendations, I would recommend that. The very last meeting that we're going to be doing is going to be on April 9th. And it's just going to be Policy Director Brent Lowe and I. We're calling it the Brent and Rebecca Show. We're going to be at the Queen Anne Library meeting room from 3 to 5 on April 9th. That is not going to be a policy meeting. You do not want us to make policy without the council member being there to sign off on it. I promise. That is a clarifying meeting only. By that point, we should have some legislation, so we'll be there to answer questions. So those are my comp plan updates, but please sign up for our newsletter if you haven't, because all of this information is going to be in that newsletter.
I also have those dates, and so we'll post them as well. Yes.
All right, thank you. But still, please sign up for our newsletter regardless. We try to have a good time with it.
Any questions for Rebecca? Gosh, we're letting you guys off easy tonight.
No complaints on this end.
All right, going once, going twice. Okay, well, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Joel. As always, we really appreciate you attending each of our meetings to give us these updates. It's important. We appreciate it. Okay. Hopefully, can everybody hear me now? Okay. Well, so tonight our primary topic is a community discussion focused on the recent immigration enforcement activity and the questions raised by many of us in Magnolia, including families, students, and neighbors. And our goal this evening is to provide accurate information and trusted resources to help connect our community with reliable guidance. And we're really grateful to have 3 speakers joining us here tonight. And so by way of agenda, we're going to have each of our speakers share their information. It'll be about 20 minutes for each of them. And then we're going to take a panel approach to a question. We'll do question and answers afterwards. So while we do tend to be a little bit more informal here, if people can hold questions till the end of the 3 speakers, then we'll have ample time to get everybody's questions answered. This is going to be the majority of our agenda tonight. So speaking tonight, we're going to start with Sam Dillon. Who's the Human Resources Director at the Associated Recreation Council. We also have Natasha Boswell and Emma from Washington Neighborhood Defense will be presenting next. And Kathleen Carson, I don't know if she's made it yet. I just got a text, she was running a little bit late. But she recently led a group to Minneapolis that's going to be speaking about her experience there. So, and then the final thing on our agenda will just be committee updates. So I will turn it over to Sam now.
Yes, you got to be close to the stick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Sam. I got a presentation here that I'll pull up in just a second. I guess I'll go over like who I am, 20 minutes. I got a lot of time, so we just gonna burn through this because there's a lot of stuff. It's important stuff. I work for the Associated Recreation Council. It's a nonprofit in Seattle here. We do a lot of work with the Parks and Rec Department, outdoor recreation stuff. We do a lot of stuff with kids too. We look after kids. That's like the important stuff, right? Part of my work as the HR director is I do speak to our employees about safety. And when I say safety, I mean, what do you do if ICE shows up at one of these community centers? We take care of a lot of kiddos, and this is like real stuff, right? So like my people, they got to know what to do. So we do that. There's a board member of ours, Ed King, who runs a nonprofit in Seattle called Pottery Northwest, and I did a discussion with their group on it, and and then they asked, I got in touch with these folks, and they asked if I could just do the stuff, so I'm going to do the stuff. All right, so we're going to just do some grounding. The first thing I guess I'm going to say is like, just stay safe during this. Psychological safety is a thing. This is like intense shit that I'm going to be talking about, and so like, if this is something that triggers something, like, take care of yourself is the main thing. It is dark subject matter. It's intense. It's like, I'm not going to like sugarcoat it. You can't sugarcoat this stuff. So primarily take care of yourself. If at any point during the meeting it's getting like to a level of intensity, step out, take the stuff. I don't do the breathing exercise stuff, but if y'all know that stuff, that could be something that can help too, right? You can see this is kind of designed for workplaces. So I do talk a little bit about it, and I'll kind of ground this. For those folks who do work, one of the things I would suggest is knowing what your organization's policies around federal agents are. If your organization does not have a policy, I would encourage that they get a policy around what to do with these types of people who show up at your place of work. I'm going to talk about your constitutional rights. One thing I'm going to say is, I should have started saying, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but I'm just going to tell you what I know. Yeah, and I'll talk to you about what your constitutional rights are, but I go to a lot of these like talks like this where lawyers do this thing, you know, and they tell you what your rights are, and they tell you, you know, for example, what the guidelines around the use of lethal force are, and like we know they're not following that. So now I'll tell you what your rights are, but I'll also try and ground it in the reality of the context that we find ourselves in today. On that note, I would say I don't think we live in normal times. I don't think it's very normal for someone like me to be in front of a group of people like you talking about this, but that's where we are. And because of that, there is an importance to this. You know, when I do this, I got usually lots of types of people in the room. You know, I don't, you know, assume to know you folks, but what I do think I know is that, you know, it is likely that everybody in this room knows somebody or loves somebody or knows somebody who is at risk because of what is going on, and that's why it is important, and that's why I appreciate y'all being here and listening and hearing this. One of the through lines I'm going to draw on this content is personal risk assessment. When I talk about a lot of these things, the question you got to ask yourself is how much risk are you personally willing to tolerate? And that'll make sense. Like when I go into knowing your rights and, you know, how you talk to these people like that, you know, at some point you have to just assess for yourself, like what level of risk are you willing to tolerate? And there's a number of factors I think you should, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but there's a number of things I think you should think about when you're thinking about what's your personal level of risk that you're willing to tolerate. I think the last thing I'll say is, you know, a little bit of the soapbox. I already said it, we don't live in normal times. Knowledge is power, so the more you know, the better, right? And so if there is anything any of us can do, the very least we can do is know what it is and know how to handle the situation if we find ourselves, unfortunately, in a situation like this. Now, I know you said informal, but I do keep it in for, like, you want to ask questions, you can't yell at me, I don't mind. Next slide, please. All right, and I got like animations here. I might have to click a few times. So can you click one time for me? Thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk about your constitutional rights. The first thing I would say is you always have the right to stay silent if a federal agent is talking to you or attempting to talk to you. One thing that I think is good to note here is if you are staying silent or choosing to stay silent, I actually think it is a good idea to state out loud that you are exercising your right to stay silent. So I know that seems counterintuitive because I just say you ain't got to say nothing. But I think you should say that because, unfortunately, silence can be construed as a number of things, obstruction and all the stuff, right? So if you are choosing to stay silent, I would encourage you, just tell them, I'm exercising my constitutional right to stay silent. You have the right to ask these enforcement officers for identification. The thing I will say, though, that is important to note is they don't have to give you identification. So you can ask for it, they ain't got to get it. But I still think it's a good idea to ask. The reason I think it's a good idea to ask is because people will know that you know your rights. I think people are a little less willing to bend those rules if they know that you know the rules. And I'm not saying they're not going to bend them or break them. They might still do that, right? But I still think, I go back to knowledge is power. Do you mind clicking forward one time for me? Oh, I'm sorry. Go back to, this is like the next part. I get fancy with the animations. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Oops.
That's all
Yeah,
right.
that just broke.
We're going to wait for it. Yeah, that was it. It was so close. I'm sorry. I'll scrape the animations next time. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
You guys think they're really fancy.
So I do talk about like your right to document things in public and private spaces. So you do have the right to document what is happening in public spaces. If that private space is your space, or for example, the place that you work, you can document too. And what I mean by document is all of us have these phones in our pockets, like record what is happening. What I would say is announce that you are doing that. If you are going to start recording an engagement and an interaction, you got this out, say out loud, I am recording this interaction. But that's how you document the stuff. We all have the phones, capture that stuff on video, what is happening. You have the right to deny entry into private spaces without a judicial warrant that has been signed by a judge or a magistrate. Now, again, this gets a little bit because I like rock with people in their workplaces, right? We're doing this, but private spaces, that's your home too. And I'll get into this in a little bit, but very specifically, the stuff about a judicial warrant. There's a lot of type of warrants, and I'm going to go over a little bit the different types of warrants that you have, but a judicial warrant is the one that authorizes the search and seizure of a property, not an immigration warrant, not an immigration subpoena, not an administrative warrant. Those do not authorize searches and seizures of private properties. Can you click next until some more text shows up for me, please?
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about that though is, you're gonna do, again, it's about what the context, the reality is of these situations, right? So you may be exercising these rights and you know what your right is. They may not respect those rights. So this goes back to like that thing about personal risk assessment. You gotta be able to manage it. And some of the things that you gotta think about when you're thinking about that personal risk is, this is gonna seem politically incorrect, but this is real, right? It's like the color of your skin, what's your national origin, what's your native language. Those are things that like are easily identifiable with like my ears or my eyes, and federal agents can do the same thing, right? So that's part of the things. When I say assess your personal level of risk, that's what I'm talking about. I give you an example. I should have done this when I like teed up in the beginning, but one of the reasons I do this, the work that I do here, like this stuff is like, I am not a citizen of this country. This stuff impacts me out. Little girls at home, I gotta get home. Say, if I get pulled over on the way home from this thing tonight, like I'm not going home. I'm going somewhere else. That's my personal risk assessment, right? Because like my stuff is different than your stuff. For your stuff, you gotta figure out for yourself how much you are willing to tolerate. Next slide, please. So if you are in a situation like where you have to engage with these people, a lot of times for me, it's like folks at the workplace, right? And like a supervisor, whatever. So like I get into like how you get the right person there. I won't kind of go into that, but what I do talk about, like the biggest thing I would say is don't lie. Rather than lie, stay silent. You don't want to give them the answer, you just stay silent. It is better to stay silent than say, I'm going to exercise my right to stay silent rather than to lie. And the specific way this comes up is if they ask you, like, do you know this person? Do you know who this person is this person here? And so if you know that, but you don't want to say, you ain't got to say, you can say, I'm going to stay silent. I know that's my right. No entry without a warrant, judicial warrant. There's a lot of types of warrants. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but like the main ones you're going to run into are search and seizure and arrest warrants. To get into the property, it's a search and seizure warrant that is signed by a judge or a magistrate, a judicial warrant. Again, the works of know like the point of contact. What I would say to a group like this, like have a plan, have an emergency plan, know who the person is, that if you know you're in some stuff, that you can pick up the phone. Who is that person you're going to call? Asking questions. You can ask these people questions. You can ask them questions such as, am I free to go? They do got to answer that question. They'll say one of two things, yeah, or they'll say no. Now, if they say no, you probably start listening and going through the steps, and I get into it in a little bit here, but if you see someone being detained, you yourself are being detained, document it. Record that stuff on video. If you see someone being taken, report them and ask them, what is your name? What's your date of birth? Who do you want me to contact for you? Asking for and providing documentation. Officers can ask you for identification to prove like your ability to be in the United States, and you got to give them ID. So you should be carrying around, and the driver's license do not count as identification that like proves that you're allowed to be in the U.S. So if someone asks you for that, just know that they are allowed to ask you for that. You should provide it if they ask. Again, personal risk assessment. If you're not going to give it, just know what's going to happen. The flip, the kind of reverse is opposite true in a way. If someone's like giving you like a warrant, a legitimate signed judicial warrant, you can't, it's very technical, you can't ask for a copy, but you can ask to make a copy or take a copy. And so what you would do is you either take a picture with your phone, or if you can, you know, make a copy of that document. All right, so this part, it's a little small, I'm gonna do my best, but like I try to go over how to tell the different types of warrants. So I think so actually hold on this page, so a couple things, I kind of touched on it already. There's a number of different types of warrants, search and seizure, arrest warrants, subpoenas. The biggest thing I'm going to focus on, like on this slide here, is the difference between, I guess, what I would consider a legitimate warrant versus something that does not authorize legitimate search and seizure of the property. The example, I'll send these slides out, y'all can have it. The one on the left is a judicial warrant. I've been talking about judicial warrants, right? So that on the left is an example of a correct judicial warrant. The reason it is correct, you can see at the very top, it's issued by a district court. And that's like one of your big signs that this is a legit thing, versus that thing on the right is a deportation warrant. You can see at the top of the one on the right, it's a Homeland Security or something issued that. So if it did not come from a district court, that's like the first sign. Address, top left. Does it have the address for where these people are at? If it is not the address you're at, that's not a legit warrant. It also is going to describe on the document the scope of the search. It's going to say like what they can look at. So like you got like, is that the right property? Is that thing they're describing? Does that exist? Is that a legitimate thing they're describing? Is it current? So the way warrants work is like, what's the date today? 17th? So I come to your front door today with a warrant dated for the 16th. That is no good. The date on it is like the date of that and like before. So it has to be current. The date has to be accurate within the time window. And it's kind of small, but it says up there, like it explains to you the 14 or 10-day window that those warrants are authorized. Last part at the bottom, is it signed by a judge or magistrate? So you can see on that one on the left, it's got the signature, it's got all the stuff is good, right? Versus the right. There's no signatures, it's not issued from a court. The person, if you could see closer, it says the signing, it's an immigration officer is the title of the person it's asking to sign. It's not a judge, it's not a magistrate. That warrant is no good. Next slide, please. I'm gonna talk about subpoenas. This is kind of the same deal, and I'm gonna move fast because I know I'm kind of burning out of time here, but
You're fine. You're okay.
subpoenas, it's the same thing, the left on the right, the court, the dates, the one on the right is not from a court, it's not legit. The biggest thing I say about subpoenas though, subpoenas do not require immediate action. Subpoenas are like requesting documents or information from a person or an organization that you are allowed to like follow up at a later time. So subpoenas really don't grant access to like immediate stuff. The reason I bring it up is because a lot of these agents be doing funky stuff where they're trying to do administrative warrants or deportation warrants and pass them off as legit things. Now I'm going to ground this in the reality. There is this ongoing, like, I don't even know, fight about do certain administrative warrants count? Now, what the law currently says is they don't count. Again, are they listening to these rules? It doesn't really seem like it. So the best thing you can do is know your rights. If you see someone getting taken, you should be taken, record it, get some information, document what has happened. Next slide, please. And I talk about how to identify, because there's a bunch of agencies running around with a bunch of letters on their stuff. The biggest thing I'll say is like those dudes in the tack gear who look like they're getting ready to invade Poland, those are those federal agents. You got a bunch of these agencies working together. It's good to know what the letters stand for. ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, ERO, Enforcement Removal Operations. You see those pictures over there? That's what these dudes look like. Next slide, please. You also got HSI, which is Homeland Security, and they are typically not people you see out in the field. But the way it's moving right now, these guys are out in the field. They're making the rips. You got CBP2, Customs and Border Patrol. The reason I have these guys on here is there are certain rules, laws, something where they can only operate within a certain radius of a border. That doesn't exist no more. That law is gone. They can do whatever, not whatever, but they can do what they want, where they want to do it. So those four agencies are the ones you got to look out for. I bring this up because I do think there's an importance of being able to identify these types of federal agents versus local enforcement. The biggest thing I would, again, just what are these dudes wearing? They're also the cowards in the masks. So if you see dudes in masks, that's probably a good sign that it's these guys. Next slide, please. Questions? I know we're doing questions.
Well, if anybody has any immediate ones, that's okay. Anything immediate for Sam?
So carry your passport.
Yeah. There's a number of things. So a passport is a good example of it. I also know it sounds ridiculous because like when I do this before, everyone says, well, I got my driver's license with me. Then you got to have the discussion that So passport is one way. Now, I know there are some other forms of identification. I don't know them off the top of my head, there's a number, but I just know driver's license doesn't count. For someone like me, if I had a green card, I gotta carry my green card around, right? Passport is one of them. Good question.
Doesn't real ID count? Is in order to have a real ID, I think that shows somebody a passport.
Is real ID like the driver's license thing?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, I don't know the answer. I'm pretty sure it doesn't count, but don't, like that part, I don't know. 'Cause I don't know.
That's what TSA requires at an airport to get through.
But you can like fly with a driver's license, right?
No, there's a difference between a plane license.
Yeah, so I would say, I don't know. I'm not gonna misanswer because I don't want anyone to, but it's a good question. I don't know the answer, I'm sorry.
We'll capture that and see if we can find a resource for that.
You can get a passport card, put in your wallet.
I think that counts, yeah, I believe a passport card counts. Yeah.
You've wisely suggested repeatedly that we use our phones. And I worked at a federal law enforcement agency until December 31st. Citizens, there's no inherent right to privacy when you are in public. Probably maybe everybody knows this. But if you are filming someone, you were in public, and you were filming someone, and they say, you can't do that, I have a right to privacy. That's not true. None of us has an inherent right to privacy when we're in a public space. So a police officer, unless you were impeding an officer's legitimate activity, no one can stop you in a public place from video or taking a photograph.
But as you said,
Correct. Yeah.
One of the things I would suggest, thank you for saying that, I appreciate that. Try like a 10-foot-ish distance, like try and maintain, because one of the things they can throw at you is like obstruction of justice. And one of the things they can do is like if you are physically obstructing a space, like if you're physically obstructing an exit, for example, like so you gotta be mindful of your surroundings as you're doing this. I would try and maintain like a little bit distance and now that you're doing it. But yes, to your point, you just gotta assess your personal risk, right? Like for me, I just look like I'm not gonna,
Oh, so we need to share the questions on the mic so the people on Zoom can hear us. Yeah, that's, well, we're just a technology quandary tonight. Okay, well, is it okay we'll move to Natasha and Emma, and then you're gonna hang out and help us with some questions in a bit. Thank you so much.
I'm going to introduce Emma and Natasha from Washington Defense Fund. And for those of you on Zoom, I apologize. We will remember to ask questions or you guys can repeat the question from the audience. Okay.
Thank you. So Sam did a really great job of describing kind of, thank you for welcoming us. We're in Washington Neighborhood Defense, and we're here to kind of explain to you guys how, like, I get nervous, sorry. We're here to talk about strengthening community support and awareness. We do neighborhood defense and know your rights outreach. And our interest tonight with Magnolia is, because we both live in Magnolia, is to try to, we have three asks. One, we need more people from Magnolia to go around and canvas with us. We go to businesses specifically. So Sam talked a lot about like individual rights, and we do the same thing, except we're geared towards businesses. And so we have, Emma's going to walk you through all the details and kind of give you the overview, but we started last summer in 2025. Emma's the founder, and then Emma's the founding vendor, and we have over 400 people, and we've reached like over 4,000 businesses all over Washington State. And so one of our asks is that we'd love more people from Magnolia to get out there and canvas and talk to people, businesses that are at risk, or if the business is not at risk, we are asking those businesses to support neighbors or people who are at risk. And so that's one of our asks. We also would like to partner with local businesses to help display this small sign that has the Wyson number on it, and Emma's going to talk a little bit more about that, so you know what that means. It has the Wyson hotline, so if you see somebody getting reported, that. And we also have a Know Your Rights training coming up with an immigration lawyer on the 22nd of February, and so we'd love people to sign up for that. And I think that's it. So thank you. Thanks for the intro, Natasha. So you can share the slides, and it'll take maybe 5 or 10 minutes to go through them. Perfect. Yeah, so as Natasha said, we're Washington Neighborhood Defense. We're not lawyers, I have to say that. We're not a nonprofit. We're not a formal organization. We're just a bunch of Washington citizens fighting fascism. We aim to visit every business in our state to help them know their rights and protect their employees in the event of an ICE interaction. Right now, business raids are not common in Washington. I think I looked it up the other day. There have been 2 in the last year, but it's a tactic that we're seeing a lot in Minneapolis and Chicago and these cities that are targeted. And we know Seattle is on that short list of cities that could be next. And so we want everybody to be ready. We don't want to be scrambling, trying to prepare people as the ICE agents are like descending on our state. We want to be, have people be ready. So that's our goal, is to spread this information. A lot of this information that Sam talked about, ours tends to be geared toward businesses. You can go to the next slide. So I'm gonna face this way so I can read. So our volunteers provide businesses with free materials about what to do if ICE visits, or if there's an I-9 audit. We have this 4-page packet with, it has kind of like a cheat sheet on the front of, here's what you do, here are your 5 steps if ICE comes. It also has hotlines for reporting ICE. There's Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, WISN, which runs a business hour hotline, bilingual, staffed, and then there's also regional hotlines in other parts of Washington. So we want people to know about those to report ICE and get rapid response teams out and resources if somebody is detained. And then we have an example of the warrants that Sam talked about, judicial warrant and an administrative warrant, and then a lot of other good information and links to information that other organizations provide. So we kind of have collated information from a lot of different works that are applicable to businesses in Washington. We have materials in English and Spanish. I think we just got a Korean translation up, and we're working on other languages. And as Natasha mentioned, we have a webinar Sunday, February 22nd with an immigration lawyer specifically geared towards businesses. So it's free. You can register to attend if you work at a business or run a business and want to come learn more. We're starting to expand our material offerings. Our latest one is this flyer for outdoor workers, so gardeners, landscapers. It tells them exactly what to do if ICE comes and tries to talk to them or detain them while they're working. So we have a lot of beautiful lawns and gardens in Magnolia. I keep these in my car and just hand them out when I see people working outside, and we want to protect, everybody in Magnolia and have them know what to do. Next slide. So you might have seen, Natasha mentioned our signs. They're based off the Indivisible sign. We had a few different ones, but businesses always like this one because it's really pretty. We have a graphic designer who's very talented. It has that Wyson number on the bottom. There's also regional ones for like West Washington, that runs the hotline there. So I'm starting to see these when I go to businesses on Ross Street. And the point of the sign is just to show solidarity. Even for businesses who don't have, may not have employees who are at risk from ICE, it's almost more important that those businesses know their rights and display signs, because they're the ones that have the ability to stand up and protect their neighbors and protect businesses nearby if ICE does come. So we want everybody to know what to do and to show solidarity.
the magic of one. One was a serendipitous, what's the word for acronym? Serendipitous acronym, so we run with it. Next slide. Washington neighborhood events. Yeah. So we have a map. I think the reason that we've been able to grow so fast is we have this map where people can log when they go to a business and it shows up on the map. And that way we have all these different great orgs in Seattle and then broader Washington, Indivisible, Evergreen Resistance, there's Troublemakers, there's all these cool groups doing canvassing, but we can all log where we've gone on this map, and that way we're not doing the same work someone else has done, and we're also finding regions that maybe have been neglected and need this information. So on that little chart, you can see we passed 4,000 businesses visited. We're at like 4,300 now. We passed 4,000 Super Bowl weekend, I think. And that's everywhere we've covered so far. If you zoom in, you start seeing a lot more of those dots around the Seattle, greater Seattle area, but we have branched out to Vancouver, Bellingham. We just got Wenatchee on the map. We have some folks that recently joined from Spokane, so there's a lot of work to do to cover all of Washington. So we have work to do in Magnolia, but also people in broader Washington and other cities who want to get involved. This is a great way. Next slide. If you do want to join one, you can go to neighborhooddefense.org and we have a little join button. When you request to join, somebody will reach out and do a vetting call. Natasha's on our vetting team. It's not, foolproof, but it's just a way to make sure that it's not easy for, people on the internet who want to cause trouble to get in. We run weekly orientations where we do a kind of a version of the training like Sam did, basic know your rights and what we tell businesses and why we tell businesses. The things that we tell them, why the information we give them is important. We have a script to use when you canvass, and videos with kind of examples of how does it go when you walk into a business, what's that back and forth like. And then we have neighborhood and visual meetups to help new members and gain confidence. It can be a little scary to be canvassing for the first time. We have office hours where folks have ask questions and very active signal chat groups to find people to canvass with and ask questions if you get a question from the business owner and aren't sure how to answer it. So it's a really easy on-ramp for anybody with any level of experience canvassing or in activism. Anybody can do this. Next slide. If you want to get involved, we have 425 community volunteers so far. You can go to neighborhooddefense.org or scan that QR code. And if you coordinate a group that would like to do this type of work, we can connect with you and get you the resources you need to get your group going without all of them having to join one. So we have a lot of coordinators who do that for more local groups. We have on our website all of our materials. You can print them at home or you can order from a printer that we have a relationship with. So it's all there ready to go. Is that the last slide? Other ways you can tell other people about Quant. You can help with our operating costs. We have software subscriptions and printing costs to cover. So there's a donate link if you can get out there, but you want to support our effort. We appreciate donations. We sell t-shirts to also raise money. And I mentioned the outdoor worker flyer already. That's it, yeah. Oh, and again, the webinar coming up with Dave Stanslow, who's an immigration attorney. There's also flyers you can print for this webinar on our website if you're no businesses and want to distribute it, or if you run a business, you sign up and we'd love to see you there. Well, that was great. And all these resources too, we ran into midwinter break with the public schools, so we know we're missing a lot of people that probably would have attended tonight. So everything will be posted on our website, including a recording of the meeting. Okay, so now I want to introduce Kathleen Parsons with Seattle Indivisible. Thank you so much. Hi, thank you. Good evening. Hi, I'm Kathleen Carson from Seattle Indivisible. And I was asked here tonight to talk about a trip that was part of the beginning of this month. So February 1st, a group of us from Public Power and a couple of the local Indivisible groups went to Minneapolis. The aim was, it was organized by Common Power. Familiar with Common Power? They're an awesome group. They do mobilizations around the country to get out the vote. They work with youth to get out the vote around the country in key races. They've been doing that since 2018. And the executive director was like, we know how to mobilize people, we know how to organize people, how do we bring those skills to bear on not just what they call the offensive of voting, getting out the vote, but the defensive about protecting our communities. So he asked a couple of us to go along with him to see what lessons we can learn from Minneapolis and bring those home. So we went on the February 1st. It was thankfully not as cold as it had been the prior week, so it's only like 0 degrees instead of -20. So we flew in, and we're still kind of like processing and still bringing things and kind of like figuring out how we want to present that. This is why I don't have a slide deck with me tonight, but saying that we really like looked at like 4 different ways that they are activated in Minneapolis, and kind of like learning what can we learn from what they're doing there to bring home here. So I was in touch with the local Indivisible groups, and they were like, oh, there's a mass sing on Sunday, you can go to that. And I was like, oh, well, our flight lands at 1:30, the mass sing is at 2, there's no way I can get there in time. So we were just gonna go to one of the memorials, and we took a wrong turn, happened right into the mass sing. So has anyone heard of the Singing Resistance? I know it's gotten picked up quite a bit, yeah. So there is a group of songwriters and musicians in Minneapolis that have organized the Singing Resistance. So they write very simple call and response songs and have these mass sings. So we were at one of the historical churches downtown, and we there was some sort of opening to this that I missed. And then we marched out. We went and marched around downtown in front of 2 hotels where I sustained and sang songs to them about how they could quit their jobs. So it was very joyful in a way. And then we went back to the church and had kind of a debrief. So we were asked to pair and share about what we were feeling. So the woman that I happened to pair with, it was her first time coming to anything. And so she said that she really appreciated the opening, which I missed. She really appreciated the acknowledgement of just the anger and the fury that they are all experiencing, and that acknowledging that allowed her to go out and sing these songs about like, hey, you can lay down your gun, you can come over to our side, you can quit your job, we'll welcome you over. Because she said, when they are in your neighborhood, it is like an infestation. And it's like, that was the word she used. And she's like, I don't want to participate in that dehumanization. So that was kind of my first like introduction to this, is the importance of art, importance of like bringing joy into it in terms of like maintaining your own humanity. So there's a lot of activism through art. The other thing that it kind of like really drove home for me is like, because like I said, this was her first time out in the community, but this is kind of one of those like ways to get activated that for people who don't see themselves necessarily in other spaces. So really wanting to really remember, because that's the part that I often leave out, because I don't view myself as a particularly artistic person, but just really maintaining that joy and humanity in doing the resistance work. So the other things that we did, we met with some of the Indivisible leaders, and we talked to them about what they were doing, what they were seeing. And what they are doing, because it is overwhelming, it is everywhere all the time. They like it is not one of those things. I was likening it to,
when we had Chopper Chaz here. This is very different. But I was getting calls from family out of town. Oh my gosh, Seattle's burning down. How how awful is it? And I was like, if you're not like literally right there, it affects your life not at all, right? And that's not like this. Like people are experiencing ICE being violent in their community in Minneapolis all the time, all day long. Like you don't know if you're gonna go drop your kid off, if you're not gonna run into ICE, or if you drop your kid off at school or go to the dentist or something like that. It was all the time. And so one woman showed me this map, it's fliesout.org. She's like, I check this map every time I leave the house so I can know where they're being active, not to avoid it, but just to be prepared. And I looked at the map and I was like, I don't know how this is helpful because there are no blank spots. There's no like, oh, they're clearly working in the Northeast right now, but they're clearly, no, it was all over. And for comparison's sake, Minneapolis and St. Paul have combined 1,000 sworn police officers. So that means like at any given time, you have 200 to 300 on shift. And there were 3,000 ICE officers at the height of the search. So that was, and they're all working all at the same time. So it really was just like all the time. So what that led to was a lot of neighborhood organizing, like on the neighborhood, on the apartment, on the block level, like people having to organize and coordinate with their neighbors because that was the only way that they could respond. They can respond effectively. You can't be like, oh, the way that ICE has historically worked, an ICE detention action would take 20 minutes or so. So you could call a rapid response and have somebody who's 10 minutes away respond, come forward, document. They were doing it in 3 minutes. It was a smash and grab kind of thing. So the only way to effectively respond to that is if you were already on site. So it was about organizing on the neighborhood, on the block level, on the having signal chats about at your apartment complex, not at even, well, in addition to the neighborhood-wide communication. So what the Indivisibles were doing to support this is that they had worked with their version of Bison and become constitutional observer trainers. So constitutional observer, I really appreciate the language, and it really is just the training so that you are prepared to do the recording and the observing and documenting at any point. So like if you are at your house, you hear the whistle, you can go out and you're ready to do that. So the Indivisibles had trained 23,000 people in the last several months. And they were just like, this is like CPR training. Everybody should be trained as a constitutional observer. It's not that you're signing up to be a rapid responder. It's that you are ready if you happen upon it. So that's something that we here are working on bringing back so that we can be one of those resources. But that was the other thing is that neighborhood block level organizing is very organic. Lots and lots of overlapping groups and efforts, but that's what it took because the redundancy is resiliency. The more that you have different connections, the more resilient your community is. So after that, we went and we worked with some mutual aid groups. So there's one church in particular, Dio Floyd. There's run by a Hispanic pastor who's a Trump voter, and he's been featured in the New York Times. So I'm not spilling any beans here, but he is very clear that he's doing this as atonement for his vote. They have transformed their church into this huge mutual aid hub. They're supporting, in some form or fashion, about 30,000 families. So they are bringing food in, repackaging it, like bulk food, repackaging it and distributing it to various neighborhood hubs where it's then delivered to people who are hiding from the U.S. government. They are so afraid that they are not leaving their homes. So we went, if you saw the story in the Seattle Times, we unloaded 50-pound bags of cabbage. And that was really poignant. We had to move them really quickly inside because again, it's very cold. You can't let the cabbages freeze outside. So you have to have 15, 20 people to move the cabbages from the street up into the church as a human chain. And then it was really kind of a moment of like clarity of like, you don't have to do all the things, but you do need to show up and be in the chain, if that makes sense. And being in the chain is so much more efficient than one person hauling the bags up and down the stairs. But one of the things, they put out a call for 40 drivers. It was a last minute call for 40 drivers, and 100 people showed up. So, and this was, you know, we were starting our third month of the surge. So people were still coming and showing up. Then we went from Dia Agusoy to one of the neighborhood churches, where they distribute the food to the immigrant families. We were given a short list of like 5 families, and then we had pieces of paper that had in Spanish written out, like, we're leaving now, we'll be there in 20 to 40 minutes, so that we can text that picture to them, and then they're like, I'm here now, text that picture to them, and then I've left it on your steps, you can text that picture to them. So we were just kind of like in a 5-block radius dropping these off. And like the very first time I went dropping off, a neighbor like down the street stepped out to watch us to make sure that we were good actors. But what we were told to do was immediately delete all of the text messages, and that if we were stopped by ICE, that we were to eat the list that we were given to protect the families that were there. Some of the things that they're really concerned about, aside from children not being able to go to school, is women, particularly later in their pregnancy, not going to the doctor and getting prenatal care. So they were working on recruiting nurses and other healthcare providers to do home visits. And yeah, I think that was the biggest one. So they were, and then also getting people who were available to help with immigration to go to people, because they were just not there. It was so pervasive, they were not leaving their homes. So then we met with someone who was doing Ice Watch. And again, this is, Ice Watch was kind of at 2 levels. So there was the neighborhood level of like, they're doing like patrols. They are getting out in the morning wearing safety vests. They are going on walks and patrolling, and they are looking for vehicles that they have learned to identify as ICE vehicles, and then they can report those. Like they can report those to groups, like watch the ICE there, or they can do the whistles and honking horns to let people know. So that was at the neighborhood level, and that is very organic and self-organized. Then there is the broader Ice Watch that they're doing there. So we went to the Whipple building, and at the Whipple building which is the federal building, has 2 entrances. And there were teams of people there who were watching every car leave and recording the license plate. So there's just this, it was so funny. He was like, I'm 78 years old. So he's out there taking a photo of every single car that the license plate. And then he's like, I don't know where this goes, but I give it to the data people. The data people put it in the database, and then they track then the dispatch, which they have dispatch will consult that. So if people call in, I think there's ICE or CICE, they will check, is this an ICE license plate? And they'll say, yeah, it is, or we don't think that's an ICE vehicle, it's just an SUV with tinted windows kind of thing. So that would help them kind of build that, kind of weed out those kind of extraneous calls a little bit. But yeah, he was very like, pointed out the clues about like, this is an ICE vehicle, this is not an ICE vehicle, and talked a lot about how they are regularly changing their strategies. So they are dressing like construction workers, or they are stopped wearing the gaiters for a while, and change cars. So instead of being in big SUVs, they were mixing in like sedans and things like that. So they had very sophisticated tracking, let's say. So then on the flip side of that, there are, again, the neighborhood level watches that are out like patrolling their streets on foot, but there are also people in cars who are going, I'm sure people may have seen some of those videos, that they are actively tracking them. And the idea is just to make noise and make sure people that are there so they don't have the opportunity. And they think that they were stopping about they were stopping about 8 out of 10 without, but 8 out of 10 of the attempted detentions without actually impeding the action. You know, just by making it uncomfortable for them to do it, just by being there and witnessing and saying, hey, don't do that, or we're watching you, you know who you are, because they were really wanting to do those slash and grabs and not have eyes on them, and it was the eyes on them that was slowing it down. So, yeah, I think that I'm trying to think.
This is what you're just describing as, yeah.
Yes.
Can you-
Okay. Yeah, what I was just describing was in Minneapolis. So, trying to think if I've forgotten anything about kind of what we did. I don't think I'm forgetting. So what we really brought away from that, from what we can do, is that neighborhood level organizing, and really appreciate work with Munt, and that. But so what we came back, and then No Kings was announced, and so what we have decided to do is really use No Kings as a springboard to push more neighborhood organizing. So we are going to be encouraging neighborhoods to connect with each other and work together, and then come together to No Kings, and then to work on that. We're building some more resources. We're bringing that together. We're bringing in partners to do more, to the partners who do more of the like explicitly neighborhood organizing. But that was our big takeaway, is that is what we saw was the neighborhood organizing. Because once you're kind of in the networks, once you're organized with your neighbors, when an organization like Dio Abasoy sends out a call, even if you don't even know what Dio Abasoy is, you know, that I would say, hey, they're looking for volunteers. I know you. Do you have time today? That kind of thing. So once you're in those networks, then that happens. That can happen. So what I've heard when I've talked to people about this is like, no, like really the next step, the most important thing that you can be doing right now is talking to your actual neighbors, not the people you kind of like know or are friendly with, and, you know, in the next neighborhood over, but like your actual physical neighbors. Like, well, what if I live in a place where there aren't a lot of vulnerable people? And I'm like, one, you don't know that, probably. Maybe you do, but probably not. But two, even if vulnerable people don't live where you are, a lot of times vulnerable people are working where you are. They're the people who are doing lawn care or cleaning the homes, that kind of thing. So it's still important. But the other thing is, if you are living in a place where there are very few vulnerable people, then you are in a reservoir of resources to bring forward to mutual aid. And so we heard this story of nobody was quite confident where he worked, but this guy, he just showed up every morning at 5 o'clock at the back of the bakery door to just stand there, to just be there just in case. And so like, he didn't have to be a neighbor. He just identified, I know this bakery, I can be here at 5 o'clock in the morning when the staff arrives. So yeah, so that's the kind of thing that we are encouraging. Again, we're also working on bringing the constitutional observer training. Again, that is like, I'm likening it to CPR training. You just want to have it in case you need it. If you never need it, that's great. Yeah, so those are the things that we are working on right now. We are coming up to No Kings, in addition to asking you all to do more connecting with your neighbors. We have lots and lots of volunteer opportunities for No Kings. So if you are interested in volunteering for No Kings, that is also something I'm happy to talk about. So yeah, I think that's what I have. Questions?
Well, thank you so much.
So I think we'll open it up to questions for any of the group. And so for those in the room, if you want to come up and use the microphone, and then those on Zoom, if you want to enter them into the chat, we'll get them for you. So, yeah, come on up. I know, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask if there's some kind of clearinghouse so that people know when ICE is in a particular area, or was there a plan about something like that?
So I'm gonna say there's a lot of resistance to compiling lists of anything right now. They're very conscious because particularly with the ICE Watch groups, that ICE is tracking them. They are like following them home and parking outside their houses and letting them know. So they also, it was like this very clear, like if you do ICE Watch, don't do mutual aid. Kind of like make that separation, especially if you do like the more organized ICE Watch. But the map that I refer to is kind of like the best kind of clearinghouse, which was iceout.org. It's the name of it is People's Over Paper, but the URL is iceout.org. But locally, there's been a little like, so it's a nationwide map. Anybody can post things there. Like it hasn't kind of gotten traction here. And I think there's just a little kind of resistance. I think I wanted to add one of the things that two of the things that I was kind of told over and over again was, or we were told over and over again is one, this is so, like the organizing there is really, really organic. And one person was really explicit about, it's really important, one, for white people to show up right now. It's really, really important for white people to show up right now and to show up with deep humility. Because there is a kind of desire to like, you're not gonna be the hero. You're gonna be the person with the 50 pound bags of cabbage. And so like just to be really deeply, come in with deep humility and follow the lead and make sure that we're not doing additional harm. So that was one of the things. And then the other thing was like that it was really important there not be like one leader that was out there. Because if you have one leader, they're inevitably gonna have some sort of flaw or weakness. And that creates friction internally in the movement, and it creates weaknesses externally. So it was really, really important that there's not just kind of like one thing for that reason, but also if the Trump administration were, for example, to take one thing out, and that's the one thing that we have, then we're weaker. Whereas if we have lots of overlapping efforts, then we're stronger and more resilient.
Just to add two short things, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network does verify reports of ICE and share their verified sightings. So they just published for January, they had, I think, 159 ICE operations in King County. So if you want to know like what has been happening, that's the best source that I know of verified information. And then, yeah, to echo what was just said, I think local rapid response groups are the best way if you really want to be plugged into where ICE is. You can do a rapid response training signal group, and then you'll see all of the reports that are coming through and kind of as they're verified or not verified.
You can also go to sam.gov and you can see the federal government contracts where they're renting out warehouses. So sam.gov.
I had a question for Sam. On the warrants, which may or may not be valid, how does your behavior change if it's a valid warrant versus a warrant that is an administrative warrant, which they tell you is valid?
That's a good question. I think the thing I would say is it's a little bit about personal risk assessment. I think if you challenge an officer and you know you've been given, for example, an administrative warrant that you know that's not a good warrant, and then you sit there and say, well, I know that's not good. You might be taken away. So I do just go back to like for real personal risk assessment. If you just because I told you what your rights are, you can assert them. That doesn't mean nothing. So what I would say is be prepared, like know what that personal risk assessment is in advance. And if you are going to challenge what they are trying to tell you is the truth and you know not to be the truth, I would maybe just say like no, and maybe be willing to spend some time away from home. It's not like a fun answer. That's the real answer.
I would add, if it is a valid judicial warrant and you checked everything, then you should
sorry, just to go back to the last one too, when we were talking about like where to identify. One thing I just kind of like to note is a couple things. So you mentioned like a specific website that you're using. Websites is much better than any apps anyone will try and recommend to you. Apps are much easier to track what you're doing, specifically on Apple devices. Apple is not very friendly towards these apps and are very compliant with the Trump administration in sharing their information. Android's a little nicer at keeping some of these apps up and running on their storefront. I would just discourage using apps from a storefront and use the websites directly if they have those resources available.
Hi, this is actually for all of you. We've been hearing some different guidance specifically around the whistle. And I was hoping you could each sort of address that and let us know if that's something we should be doing, not be doing, should we be trying to amplify that at all? I'm gonna say this is a very tricky question for me to answer, but I am going to say it is highly context dependent. So what we saw, because the license posts on the whistles came out while we were in Minnesota, and they used them heavily in Minnesota. Like it is, when I walked into the hotel to check in, I had a whistle on, and the clerk was like, wait, where's my whistle? Like that, like it was really, really important to them. And we asked, like, what do you feel about whistles? And they were like, oh, if we don't have whistles, we're just letting them take people for free. And I say that because the context is really important. And if they had 3,000 ICE agents that were conducting multiple detention activities a day, all over the city, unexpected. So they were really highly dependent on the whistles to call people out in real time. That's not currently what our context is here. And so currently what our context here is that the handful of times that whistles have been used, it has not been used effectively. So that is why, like, what I'm hoping that we can get to is, you know, again, like, I'd love to get to 23,000 people trained as constitutional observers, and as part of that, it's really clear, like, training around when to use the whistles and what we're using the whistles for, as opposed to just like, oh, we're just, everybody has a whistle and we're kind of like just using them willy-nilly, if that makes sense. So that's my not very great answer, I think. So also, WISE is not a rapid response organization, so it makes more sense for them to come out with that. There are other immigrant organizations that still want people to use whistles in a responsible way to alert people, but not necessarily to obstruct justice. And I feel like that's the only thing I should.
Yeah, my personal interpretation of the WISE and Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network posted and said, please don't associate our name with whistles. I took that as its word, is they don't want their organization associated with promoting whistles. I don't think that means they're against whistles. I think there's a time and a place where whistles help and when it doesn't help, but it's important, I think, to voice in their nonprofit, and their thing is nonviolent observation, and they do rapid response, but they do it in a very non-obstructive way, which is important for them to have control of their materials and their name and when it's associated with whistles. But yeah, as it's been shared, whistles can be extremely effective, as we've seen in Minneapolis.
I think people really want to be helpful, and so I think there's a lot of good intention around it. I do think Seattle right now is not in that place. I hope we don't get to that place, but I think, you know, 3,000 agents versus however many are in Seattle is different. I think whistles have a time and place. I think you get trained, right? Like, are people effectively using them? I think right now not really in our city, because I don't think we as we do more of these types of things, more people will learn. The other thing is that, you know, I get concerned a little bit in our area about misinformation and reporting, like things that, you know, may not actually be as they appear. And so I get a little concerned about whistles being, again, good intentions, but maybe not being used the correct way. And do we all even have the same understanding of what whistles are being used for in the first place? I don't think so, and so therefore I would maybe just err against it. I wouldn't necessarily like tell someone, hey, don't do that. I just know my personal opinion. I got other things.
did want to add, thank you for, that was really, all of that was really good. Back to White being a nonprofit with the number on it. When people become aware of the number they get at ticket calls, and that they frequently get overwhelmed. So if they're dealing with 47 calls about mistaken ice sighting, they are not getting the 2 calls about the actual ice sighting. And so that's where it's kind of that really the tension that's always there in terms of capacity and awareness, that they want people aware, they want people to use it, but the kind of explosion of things was overwhelming, I think. And they've already been targeted, more in terms of the Trump administration going after them. So they are very conscious of that they, if they were to be associated with something that they have clearly trained their volunteers not to do, that could really jeopardize their organization and their efforts.
Okay, I have 2 questions. One is for Sam, one is for Juan. And Sam, what I could imagine happening here in Magnolia at some point that would surprise us is our gardener being taken away, something like that, or we just see something on the street. We have a lot of apartments here where there are places where I could see ice, seeing them as good hunting territory. So you said when you see someone's being taken away, you yell, who do you want us to call? Which makes sense. But you also said, what's your date of birth? And that's I don't know why I would ask somebody that if they're being, carted off into a car. Am I going to remember that? But so what, if there were just 3 things that you could ask for, 2 things that you could ask for, what would those 2 things be?
So you hopefully won't have to remember because you want to be recording what they're saying when you ask them these things. Date of birth so you can identify them. They get sent places they don't care. They're not going to take that information. So for the people, the 3 things, their name, their date of birth, who you want to contact. You want to contact that person and say, whoever it is said this. If you have a date of birth and a legal name, that helps whoever it is gets that information, track that person and figure out where they went. Because without that information, it does become difficult, or can become difficult to track. That's a good question.
Great, good answer. So for Juan, I get that you guys are here kind of recruiting for volunteers, but and I was thinking, Magnolia has a lot of small businesses like adult family homes and nursing home kind of things that are tucked away in our neighborhood that they don't have signs, a lot of them. And so I could see where this is something that could be really useful here to really track all those things down, as opposed to just going to Albertsons. But I'm curious about what your actual strategy is. So when you go into a business, what are you, we've heard a lot about warrants and things like that, but are there some really specific things that you could share with us here that you would tell a business how to handle? They've got an employee who's vulnerable. Maybe nobody's come for them yet, but they've got a vulnerable employee. How are they going to do that? I mean, if you have time to share that, that would be excellent.
Yeah, the kind of quick summary, the most important things we tell businesses are, first, you can lock your doors. You can refuse entrance to your business to anybody. If ICE comes in and they're already inside, it's really important to have private areas labeled as private. So private employees only in your break room, the entrance to your kitchen, whatever it is, because even if ICE is in the public area, they cannot go into those private areas without a judicial warrant. So having those spaces labeled, having your employees know that that's where they go if ICE comes in. You have someone who is the designated person to talk to ICE, someone who's a designated reporter, and everybody else goes into those private spaces. And, you know, then you ask for the judicial warrant. If they don't have it, you can ask them to leave. So that's kind of the main thing. And then for I-9 audits, you have 3 days. You don't have to give them anything right away, and you shouldn't. Those are the main things. There's a lot more information in the packet, but it's that information and it's having a plan and practicing the plan. And I would just add to your previous question that, you know, it's good to know what to do if you do see someone detained. I think the most important thing we can do now is have conversations with not just the people you think might be at risk, like your gardener certainly, but everybody, you know, that you interact with regularly. Do you know what to do if ICE comes? Go into your coffee shop. Do you guys have a plan? You know, bring the lawn information. You don't have to be a trained lawn volunteer to just hand out a flyer. And talk to your gardener. Give them the outdoor worker flyer that we have. You know, offer to talk to them about it if they have questions. We do have a lot of immigrants in Magnolia. You know, we're not known for that, but I've gone into a lot of businesses and been, you know, where I didn't think they would be very interested, and been really surprised by how grateful they were to have that information. Magnolia is a really big neighborhood and we got a lot of people in it, so I don't think we're going to be exempt from anything as nice as that would be.
I was just going to add that 2 things. One, when we were in Minneapolis, like most of the restaurants that we went to had their front door locked, and you had to be let in by a staff member. Not all of them, some, but almost all of them. If they had a back door, they were sending you around in the back door because it was more restricted entry. So that was, you know, like that was really, really consistent across the city. The other thing was to say, while we were in Minneapolis, there was a nice detention in West Seattle. And what happened was there was somebody out on the job, they saw it, didn't know what to do, went home, posted it on Facebook. And that's how people found out about it. And it was just like, oh, if we just had kind of thought through like exactly what Sam was talking about. What is it that I want to do? What is it that I need to do? Who can I call? Like that kind of thing. Those that just kind of like prepping for that.
So we announced that we're going to record. When we see something, our gardener, whoever, it doesn't matter if it's being taken away, we announce that we're going to record, and we do that. Where does it go? Where do we send it?
So I think that's why one of the things I said we want to try to ask for is like, who do they want? Essentially, what you're asking is like, who can I tell for you? You know, so like you want to get information that identifies what you're asking. Like, think about like an emergency contact when you fill that shit out, right? Like at work or whatever. So like you just want to ask them like, who is important for me to get a hold of? How do I get a hold of them for you? And try and have them speak loudly. And if they can give you, the easiest thing they can give you is a name and a phone number of someone they want you to get a hold of. And what I would encourage is that you get that footage to that person. So I would make one of your first questions, if you see that, who can I get this footage to? Give me a phone number.
Is there anybody else?
I was just going to add, and don't post on social media.
No.
Because that can be important. There is detention and they want to use the footage in court and they're aware you don't want to release it if they want.
So you don't send it to anybody other than, what if they don't have, or what if they don't live? Do you send it to Ron? Do you send it to, I mean,
are there immigration?
Yeah.
Is there?
I'm not a lawyer, so I'll be honest, I'm not going to give you like a good answer here. I think a few things. If you have no place that you can, like, that you get from the person, like that you can get it, being careful not to upload this to any like websites or anything, but doing some research. Any organizations, nonprofits within our city that will take that footage to use it to get assistance. And the immigration solidarity, that would maybe, I think, a good place to start. I think if nothing else, the other thing I would do is caution retaining that footage on your phone. It's just, it is a risk, and it goes back to personal risk assessment. You're willing to be called with that video on your phone? There's nothing wrong with it. You're just going to answer the questions you get.
We've got 2 questions online. Questions for the Washington Neighborhood Defense. If a business has had one of your signs up and is trained and has a physical part of the business that is clearly private, do they have the ability to shelter someone who is at risk? Can they invite an employee or a customer or a neighbor into that private space and tell ICE they just cannot enter without a judicial warrant?
So I'll promote our webinar again. There will be an actual immigration lawyer, and that's a great question to ask them because there's a lot of nuance, but not legal advice. Your employees and anybody can go into those private spaces. If ICE is chasing them or targeting somebody, then you can be in, what's the word?
Accessory?
Harboring, that's the word. Yeah, you can be harboring someone they want, and that can put you at legal risk. So.
And this was a follow-up comment and question. I also heard if you witness an abduction to look to see if they leave their cell phone or ID behind. If yes, grab and give back to their family. Saying if the car is left behind, contact their family before their belongings are taken. Is that what is advised?
I think you gotta be careful taking that property, because I do think these agents are just looking for any reason to get you too. So I just would be careful, and that's where y'all gonna get tired of your personal risk assessment. What are you willing to tolerate, right? What was the second part of that question?
Like
Oh,
like if they leave their, yeah,
so
if they
like,
leave
I
things
go
behind.
back to like, do you know who their family is? Do you know how to get a hold of their family? If you do, yeah, you can get them stuff like a license and phone. But I think maybe the thing I would say, like, because we keep going over this, is like, if this stuff is happening to you, like, you're probably not gonna remember what I told you. It's like this, it's like it's real shit. Like, it's like you've seen someone get ripped off the streets. That's like, if you can remember even one thing that I told you, you're doing great. But it's not going to be a perfect scenario where you can get a nice 5-minute video and they're going to have clearly all that stuff. Just do the best you can. If you are in a situation where you have access to, because you also might see someone get taken, right? So if you know and you know who their people are, then yeah, get them that stuff, but also know that you are taking a risk by taking that property. If there's a car gets left in the street, you go drive that car? You can if you want to, but again, just like what's the personal risk? Are you willing to spend a couple nights overnight somewhere you don't know? And the probably is like, well, I would say a lot of people I feel like you probably will just be a couple nights away type thing. So if you can tolerate that, then yeah. This is like, how far are you willing to go?
There are trainings though for people to become escorts, and so like an escort would help somebody they're checking into federal immigration court, and let's say they got taken there. There are people that there are people that will help them contact their family, hold on to their belongings. So there's training for that, and so that would go through twice. And there's a couple different places we go through for that. So.
Kind of back to what you were asking with the video and these kind of questions, these are the times to actually call the Wise hotline that they can give you. Like if they're, I don't know enough about their inner workings to say what would happen, but they could give the information about what to do at that point, or if their rapid response team is available.
It's the Wyson hotline.
The Washington immigration solidarity.
We'll post that.
Just as a neighborhood that is known as being well-to-do, you mentioned mutual aid organizations in particular, and that we can be more impactful that way right now. So do you have any resources you'd like to share that way that we can start donating?
we are currently working on building that up for the Seattle ones, like our list and kind of like helping direct that. So I don't have a good answer for that right now. I am happy to share some of the ones from Minneapolis. They were very clear with us that even when ICE leaves, there's just going to be a lot of repair to that is an ongoing need that's going to happen there. So I'm happy to share some of those resources. And then when we have a better list of mutual aid, I'm also happy to share that.
Just to add on to that, there are some models that we can, I'm not reading it, like we need people to all, work together, but on Indivisible, there's Juno Pod. So there are some other neighborhoods that are creating these neighborhood safety plans for things like this or disasters. And so we do have some neighborhoods that we can look at that. But Juno Pod is good.
Yeah, that's one of the other things that's been kind of a topic of conversation for us. Like, even if ICE never comes here, we will be better off for having done this work. So just, whether it's mutual aid or just meeting your neighbors or getting trained as with, businesses or, the constitutional observer training, all of that, we will be better off for having done it.
So one is more businesses that have you also tried to contact the schools, daycares, and churches? Because those are good starting points in the schools.
I can answer, just I'm gonna hand, but Indivisible is the National Day Labor Organization, and they that is another really good opportunity if you're not familiar with it to volunteer right now. So they have people supporting day laborers who are at like Home Depot and Lowe's and other places where they congregate. They are also have an Adopt the School, so their day labor program is Adopt a Corner, and then they are developing an Adopt the School model to work with the schools.
So the three schools in Magnolia do have safety plans. It's Catherine Lane, Watson, Magnolia.
They have one too.
Okay, so private schools as well. So they do have safety plans. Yes. Yeah, the daycares, one does have. We are all in.
We actually started just going to daycares and then really quickly realized that everybody needs the information. So we have our packet is applicable for daycares. There's some additional information and kind of tips for daycares that are good, and we have a packet for that that's internal that we're waiting on a final version of as well. But there's no reason you can't share our standard packet with the daycare, and it's it all applies. There's just some stuff that's more geared towards like a restaurant than a daycare.
Just real quick on the childcare note, we run a lot of childcare at my organization, and I've been doing this with all my people. So as far as safety plans, I did it for this is like if I'm external, so I have a version of what I did with y'all from like my employees that go through this stuff like much longer. I do about an hour with them. So like we have safety plans. The other thing you gotta just be mindful of, a lot of these are like public spaces. So the way you operate in a public space versus a private space can be pretty different. Schools are public spaces, and a lot of the daycare that happens or the after school programs that happen in those public spaces. But at least like for my purview, like the programs we run, we try to do a pretty good job of getting this content out to them, and I will selfishly, Art does that work. I'll share some content for us, but we take donations too, and that helps me keep doing this type of work that I'm doing. Get more people to do it, because I'm right now kind of the only one who works with our employees. But the more people, and part of the reason I come and do this stuff is the more people who know this information, the more helpful.
I feel like we heard from SPD at some point, and also from Councilmember Kettle, who's been working with SPD, that there are times maybe we should call them if we're witnessing an encounter. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
maybe not.
No, I'm like, for real, like, I'm not gonna say, like, I don't agree with that, but I'm not gonna speak to it.
Sure. I don't have things from it.
Okay, that's helpful. Any other questions from the room? And Joel, not to put you on the spot, I did email you, but if there are any resources or anything that I have some from Councilmember Kettle that I'll add to this, but if Councilmember Strauss has anything, blog posts or anything you want me to add to this, I'd be happy to share that as well. Okay. Well, again, this was so valuable and I really appreciate you spending so much time with us. So maybe another, thank you so much.
We would love to stay in touch as things develop, as there's more resources coming, that we'll keep our website posted. Just stay in touch with all of you, but thank you so much. Well, we just have a bit of council work to just wrap up. We want to just take a 5-minute, quick break. Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and do committee updates.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're gonna gather back up the last part of the meeting. Okay, so I hate to break up all the conversations. These are great conversations and I'm glad we're having them, but we've got 16 minutes and I think we just have Nina. So we were going to have an update on the latest iteration of the comp plan and NCC's response, and I sent all the trustees our proposed letter for that today, and Nina was going to speak to it, but she is unfortunately sick. Brad is out of town, so I think what we'll do is she's going to send me some bullet points. I'll get that all out to everybody the next day or so we can read through it. If we've got agreement on that letter, then we can get that sent off. And I'll include Brad and Nina on there since they're probably the best ones to be fielding questions on this. So next to Dawn.
Wait, do we have a question?
Yeah, this is Kurt. What is the forum for debate on either one of those topics? If we're, we're just gonna debate it via email, or are we gonna have side meetings, or because I don't know. I'm mostly good with the comp plan letter, but I have serious concerns about what we're recommending for the SDOT safety budget.
Okay. I think for the land use letter, I think we'll need to start that conversation probably over email, and then if we need to set up a follow-up meeting, a Zoom meeting or something like that, we can do that.
Okay, and what about the same for the council recommendations for the transportation funds?
Let me follow up with you offline on that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn over to Don for a lot of things.
Not really. So Joel, as Joel mentioned, a couple of things on the park related, if you will. The Environmental Learning Center, as he pointed out, there are funds available, some funds. Whether it's enough funds to actually do the reconstruction sort of remains to be seen, but it comes out of the city, totally separate budget, which is the city's budget for decarbonization, and funds for the rehab of the ELC, which primarily their physical systems were damaged, their furnace and electrical and all of that. The city's going to use those funds against the repair. But it looks to me personally, this isn't from the Seattle Parks or our council member's office, but my personal projection is it looks like they would be doing construction in late 27, more likely be 28 before there's something there. So that's good and bad news. There is some money out there, but it'll be a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, what you said, we might get more.
What he's referring to is the fact that the systems that go into the building will be better than the ones that were there before, and it'll be nice. I haven't seen the plans myself, so until we see the plans, until we see the wood, as they said, in the ground, we won't really know. Another topic, the post office collection boxes, my favorite topic. They actually say that they're going to be installed the first week of March. So I'll be watching that sidewalk carefully. I am a little skeptical because the post office has not proven very reliable in their communication, if nothing else. Also outstanding with them is what's going to happen with the collection box that used to be there by Magnolia Park, which was heavily used, and I can't get any answer at all out of them. So we'll keep dripping water on the rock, and hopefully something comes up. Several people mentioned Ursula Judkins. Don't have an answer for you on that yet. They're continuing to talk to the Department of Neighborhoods about exactly what they require in their request for proposal, and whether we could, in fact, if David is still on the online, he might have a better update, but the discussion is whether we might ask for a smaller amount of money so we could plan exactly the amount of money that was needed to make a more substantive proposal. At least that's my understanding.
He's giving you a thumbs up.
Yeah. That's Bridget.
Oh, that's.
Oh, yeah. he
The
went off to
Friends
Peter Pan.
of Ursula Judkins Park. Like, the main thing that, if I understand it, they're interested in is getting the community council to work with us on grants. So
Yes,
to join with us. And
yes.
help us find information.
And there's some things that we need to work out on our end. So we need to look, so we are a 501c4, not a 3. And so there may be I was at, sorry, I'm not getting this out very clearly, but I was at Bob Kettle's District 7 meeting last Friday, and it was very quick. It was like just the Department of Neighborhoods gave us just like a little bit of information, had to run out. So I barely got my question in, but I did ask about if our C4 would preclude us from being eligible for that. And he said he thought so. So we need to look into that. So there's some nuts and bolts types things that we need to look into. I think we are very interested in supporting Ursula Judkins Park and that work. And if there's a different capacity that we can do it in, you know, that might be the solution also. So more to come on that soon.
And the last thing I had, which relates to parks, is some of you are probably aware of House Bill 2468, which is a bill sponsored by our very own Democratic representatives, which would essentially compel all cities, among other other entities, prevent them from enforcing any rules to remove people engaged in living activities in any public space. It essentially would enable somebody to put their tent up in the middle of the playground and the city would be prevented from removing them at all. Now, that's if that law would not go into effect if the city had I can't remember the exact wording, but it affected, sorry? Adequate shelter as defined in the law, which is quite detailed, and according to testimony taken, no one would actually have meet that standard right now, which would mean that would not be possible. Right now, that bill is in the Rules Committee, unless it came out today. So keep your eyes open. And if you have an opinion on it, you can express it to our representatives down in the Olympic. That's all I got.
Thanks, Don. Emily?
Yes, a huge thank you to Don was keeping me track of all the shenanigans of tracking down the updates from the post office. That was a lot of running around, so we appreciate that. A very quick update from the Education Committee. Here in our district, we have a new school board director, Kathleen Smith, who replaced outgoing Sarah Clark. And SPS also has a new superintendent, Ben Schuldiner, maybe. I've reached out to both of them. Heard back from Kathleen Smith. We're going to try to get her at a future meeting. The idea initially was to have her come tonight to talk about how SPS is responding to ICE engagement. So we may be able to get her at next month's meeting as we sort of continue these conversations with different groups. And then Ben Schuldiner actually proactively reached out to us to ask if he might come annually to give a state of the district update to our community. So I think that would be a great thing. We have a lot of families, a lot of school age kids. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. Thank you, because you've been doing a lot of work to track them down too. Is there any other business that anybody has for us tonight that they want to bring up? Okay, well then, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Andy.